Keep an eye out for the golden star that will appear on screen during the video. If you spot it, comment the time frame you saw it in. Get it right, and you'll get a shout out in our next video. Happy hunting! In the fading light of a sleepy coastal town, Alexios sat in the quietude of his modest home, a small attic room crammed with the relics of a life he once shared with his mother. The air was thick with the scent of old books and sea salt, a constant in his otherwise changing world. His fingers traced the edges of a dusty box, one of the last unopened vestiges of his mother's extensive collection of artifacts and manuscripts. She had been an archaeologist, passionate and relentless, her life's work dedicated to uncovering the hidden narratives of the ancient world. With a hesitant reverence, Alexios lifted the lid. Inside, nestled among protective layers of faded linen, was an assortment of trinkets and papers. His eyes were drawn to a peculiar amulet, its bronze surface tarnished by time, etched with symbols that whispered of ancient Greece. Intrigued, he picked it up, feeling the cool metal warm against his skin. As he examined the amulet, the room dimmed, the walls seeming to draw closer. A soft hum began to resonate from the amulet, growing louder, as if reacting to his touch. His heart raced, not with fear, but with a burgeoning curiosity. Alexios turned the amulet over in his hands, peering at the cryptic inscriptions. They were familiar yet elusive, like a dream half remembered. "What secrets are you keeping?" he murmured, his voice low, as if afraid to break the spell the amulet cast around him. The hum intensified, and without warning, a pulse of blinding light erupted from the amulet, enveloping Alexios in a golden radiance. His attic room vanished in a swirl of light and shadow, replaced by a vast expanse of stars that seemed to dance mockingly before his eyes. Panic clawed at his chest, but a surge of adrenaline propelled him into the unknown. When the light finally receded, Alexios found himself standing in the center of a grand hall, far removed from the familiar confines of his attic. Towering columns of white marble stretched towards a ceiling painted with scenes of heroic deeds and divine assemblies. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and old stone, a stark contrast to the salty tang of his seaside home. Disoriented, he staggered forward, his mind racing to piece together the impossible. The hall was lined with statues of formidable figures, each bearing the regalia and bearing of gods from tales his mother once recited by his bedside. He approached one, its face stern and majestic, and he felt the weight of its gaze as if assessing his worth. "Where am I?" Alexios asked aloud, his voice echoing off the marble. No answer came from the silent watchers of stone, but the question lingered in the air, a riddle unanswered. As he ventured deeper into the hall, whispers seemed to drift through the rows of statues, hints of a destiny foretold that was now beginning to unfold. Each step took him further from the life he knew, a life of quiet obscurity, and deeper into a world woven with the threads of myth and legend. With each breath, a mixture of fear and excitement built within him, a duel of emotions that beckoned him to embrace this new reality. As the initial shock ebbed away, Alexios' thoughts turned inward. "What does this mean? Why me?" he pondered, his mind a whirlpool of questions with no shore in sight. But deep down, a part of him knew that his life was about to change forever, that this was no mere accident of fate. This was destiny calling, and it had chosen him to step into a legacy as old as the gods themselves. The grand hall, with its marbled grandeur and celestial frescoes, gradually ceased to spin as Alexios steadied himself against a cool, stone pedestal. Above him, the painted skies of the ceiling seemed to pulse with an ethereal light, casting gentle shadows over the statues of gods who watched in silent judgment. His heart still thumped loudly, a stark reminder of the surreal journey he had just endured. "Welcome to the Academy of Theoi," a voice echoed, rich and melodious. Startled, Alexios spun around. Before him stood a woman, her presence commanding yet ethereally graceful. She was draped in a robe that shimmered with the hues of dawn, her eyes alight with the wisdom of ages. "I am Chirona, your guide and the dean here," You must have many questions. Alexios nodded, his throat dry. I don't understand. How is this possible? Chirona smiled, a gesture that seemed to ease the weight of the marble and mystery surrounding them. This academy has existed for millennia, hidden from the mortal world. It is a sanctuary and a school for those like you, children of the gods. As they walked through the hall, Chirona explained the academy's purpose: to harness the potential of demigods and prepare them for roles both in the divine and human realms. Alexios listened intently, his initial shock giving way to a burning curiosity. The corridors were lined with doors that glowed faintly, enchantments whispering of locked secrets, and lessons waiting to be learned. They passed other students who varied in age and demeanor, some casting curious glances at Alexios, others nodding respectfully to Chirona. The diversity was staggering, beings with auras that flickered like flames, some with eyes like the ocean depths, and others who moved with the grace of the wind. Why was I brought here now? Alexios ventured, his voice steadier. Chirona paused before a large window overlooking the sea. Your mother was one of us, a daughter of Athena. She chose the mortal world over her heritage but safeguarded you against this day. Your arrival was triggered by your readiness, the amulet merely a key. Outside, the academy grounds sprawled across cliffs and forests, with pathways that spiraled like the patterns of fate. Training fields, gardens of exotic flora, and reflective pools filled the landscape, each corner alive with the vibrancy of magic. Your training will begin tomorrow, Chirona continued. You will learn to master your powers, understand your heritage, and most importantly, find your path in our world. That night, Alexios was shown to his quarters, a room that looked out over the starlit sea. The walls were adorned with tapestries that depicted heroic quests and epic battles. Lying in a bed far softer than any he had known, his mind raced. Am I truly ready for this? He whispered to the quiet room. The gentle crash of waves against the cliffs seemed to answer, a soothing sound that lulled him towards sleep. Yet sleep eluded him as he pondered his mother's hidden life, his unknown father, and the weight of a legacy he was only beginning to understand. Who am I to be among gods? He thought, the enormity of his new reality settling around him like a cloak. But beneath the doubts, a spark of excitement kindled, a yearning to rise to the challenges ahead, to discover his true strength, and perhaps, to find where he truly belonged. As the moonlight streamed through his window, painting silver trails across his floor, Alexios felt a connection to this strange new world, a sense of destiny slowly weaving its threads through his heart. As dawn's light seeped through his window, gilding the tapestries that lined his room, Alexios awoke to his first morning at the Academy of Theoi. Despite a restless night, there was an eager tension in his movements as he dressed. Today, he would begin his formal training, stepping into the role his heritage demanded. Yet, beneath his anticipation, a thrum of uncertainty lingered, a remnant of his night's worries. He made his way to the grand dining hall, a vast room with ceilings arched like the sky and tables laden with food that seemed to defy the simple laws of nature, fruits that shimmered with a subtle glow, breads that steamed with the warmth of a summer's day, and decanters of morning dew instead of water. The students around him chattered with an ease he envied, their voices carrying stories of magical feats and divine escapades. Alexios hesitated at the threshold, clutching the strap of his satchel. Just a student among others, he reminded himself, though his heart knew the truth of his uniqueness. It was then he noticed her, Callista. She sat at a table surrounded by a clique of students, her posture regal, her eyes sharp and assessing. Her hair was a cascade of silver, much like the moonlight that had bathed his room, and her gaze when it landed on him was piercing and unapologetic. Callista's reputation as a descendant of Athena was known to him. Whispers of her prowess and ambition had reached his ears even before his arrival. As their eyes met, a chill of premonition brushed Alexios, not from fear, but from the recognition of a challenge. Alexios took a seat at the far end of the hall, his back to the sea, allowing him to watch Callista without obvious scrutiny. He observed the way others deferred to her, the subtle nods and quick compliance with her gestures. It was clear she wielded influence here, as tangible as the powers they were all born to harness. "Alexios, isn't it?" A voice broke his concentration. A young man with eyes like storm clouds and hair the color of wet slate extended a hand. "I'm Dorian, descendant of Aeolus. You look like you could use a friend." Grateful for the distraction, Alexios shook his hand, welcoming Dorian's friendly demeanor. "I'm just trying to find my footing," Alexios admitted, his gaze flickering back to Callista's table. Dorian followed his gaze, a wry smile forming. "Callista? She's brilliant but as tough as they come. Thinks of this place like a chessboard and everyone in it as pieces. Does she see me as a threat?" Alexios mused aloud, not expecting an answer. "Perhaps," Dorian replied thoughtfully. "Or a new piece in the game she hasn't figured out how to play yet. Either way, you're on her radar, and that's not always the best place to be." Their conversation was interrupted as Chirona entered the hall, her presence commanding immediate attention. She announced the beginning of the day's training and beckoned all new students to follow her to the arena. As they walked, Alexios felt Callista's eyes on him, her interest marked by a cool calculation that made him straighten his spine. In the arena, the true test would begin, not just of his powers, but of his ability to navigate the intricate social hierarchies of the academy. "Today you'll learn where you stand." Callista's voice floated towards him, a soft murmur meant only for his ears as they assembled for the first demonstration. Alexios met her gaze, his resolve hardening. "And I suppose you'll be the one to teach me that?" he responded quietly, the challenge clear in his voice. Callista's smile was thin, almost imperceptible. "Among others," she conceded, her eyes gleaming with an unspoken promise of rivalry. As Chirona began explaining the exercises, Alexios took a deep breath, focusing on the tasks ahead. Today, he would not only discover his abilities but also how deeply entwined his fate was with those who walked the line between God and mortal. In this new world, every step was a dance, every word a spell, and every interaction a battle of wits and wills. Ready or not, the game had begun, and Alexios was now a player. The morning air was crisp as Alexios and his fellow initiates gathered in the sprawling arena of the Academy of Theoi, a vast circle of sand and stone that echoed with the whispers of past confrontations. The arena was surrounded by tiered seats, where students of higher years gathered to watch, their eyes gleaming with interest and anticipation. Chirona stood at the center, her voice carrying effortlessly over the murmurs of the crowd. "Today, you will face your first challenges," she announced, her gaze sweeping over the initiates. "These are designed not just to test your strength, but to reveal your character." Alexios felt his pulse quicken, a mix of nerves and excitement tingling through his veins. Beside him, Dorian clapped him on the shoulder, a silent gesture of camaraderie. Across the arena, Callista watched them, her expression unreadable, but her intent clear. She was measuring potential allies and rivals alike. The first task was simple yet daunting: control. Each initiate was to manipulate a raw element native to their divine heritage. For Alexios, it was the wind, a reflection of his father, Hermes, dominion over travel and messages. "Concentrate, Alexios. Feel the air around you, listen to its whispers, command it as you would a part of your own body," Chirona instructed gently. Closing his eyes, Alexios reached out with his senses. The wind was a living thing, a wild dance of forces he needed to tame. He focused, envisioning the currents as extensions of his will. Gradually, a breeze stirred, growing stronger under his command, until it whirled into a small vortex. A murmur of approval rippled through the spectators. Callista's turn came, and she approached the task with a clinical precision that spoke of her lineage. Her element was strategy, embodied not in physical form but in a game of war played out on a board before her. Her movements were swift, each piece set with deliberate intent, dismantling her opponent's defenses with ease. As the trials progressed, the challenges grew in complexity and danger. The next was combat. Each initiate was paired with a holographic adversary, tailored to probe and exploit their weaknesses. Alexios faced a figure of light, its form blurring with speed. He dodged and weaved, his own agility tested to its limits. The figure adapted with each move, pushing him harder. Sweat beaded on his brow, his breath came heavy, but his determination burned fiercer. With a deft maneuver, he found an opening, striking the figure and dissipating it into a shower of light particles. Watching from the sidelines, Callista's eyes narrowed slightly. Her analytical mind was working, assessing his performance, no doubt storing away every detail for future reference. The final test of the day was the most perilous, confrontation with personal fears. Chirona called it the Mirror of Phobos, a magical artifact that conjured an illusion of one's deepest fear. When Alexios stepped before the mirror, the surface shimmered, and suddenly, he was back in his attic room, the walls closing in, a suffocating darkness enveloping him. His heart raced, a primal fear of confinement and abandonment seizing him. But amidst the panic, a voice whispered within him, "Use your fear, turn it into strength." Breathing deeply, Alexios focused on the love and memories of his mother, the strength she had shown him all her life. Gradually, the walls receded, the darkness ebbed away, and he was back in the arena, the mirror's surface once again still. Applause broke out, a few cheers punctuating the air, as Chirona nodded in approval. "Well done, Alexios. You have shown courage and resilience beyond your experience." Exhausted yet exhilarated, Alexios joined Dorian and a few others, their faces flushed with the day's exertions. They exchanged stories of their trials, a bond forming in the shared crucible of their challenges. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows over the arena, Alexios felt a newfound confidence stirring within him. Today, he had not only faced external challenges but had also confronted the internal ones that had haunted him since his arrival. Each test had forged a little more of the hero he was meant to become, a hero worthy of the legacy of Hermes. And somewhere in the crowd, Callista watched, her thoughts obscured behind a veiled look of contemplation. Today had changed the game, and Alexios was no longer just another piece on the board. He was a player in his own right, one she might have to reckon with sooner than she had anticipated. The aftermath of the trials left the Academy of Theoi buzzing with chatter and speculation. Alexios, emerging as a notable contender, found himself both celebrated and scrutinized more intensely than before. The dining hall that evening resonated with the echoes of the day's events, stories intertwining like the threads of a complex tapestry. As Alexios made his way through the hall, the murmurs seemed to crescendo around him, a mixture of admiration and envy painting the faces of his peers. His achievements in the arena had not gone unnoticed, and with recognition came the inevitable ripples of rivalry. Sitting down with a tray of the evening's offerings, Alexios couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversations, his name woven through them with varying threads of respect and skepticism. "He's got Hermes' blood, all right. Did you see that move in the second round?" one voice said, admiration lacing the words. "But he's still new. Experience in these halls counts for more than a moment's brilliance." Another countered, skepticism threading through the tone. Across the hall, Callista sat with her usual entourage, her silver gaze catching Alexios's from across the room. Her expression was unreadable, but the intensity of her stare was a clear message. He was on her chessboard now, a piece she was yet to understand fully. Dorian leaned in, his voice low. "Careful, Alexios. Success here can be as dangerous as failure. Callista doesn't like uncertainties in her strategies, and right now, you're a big one." Alexios nodded, absorbing the weight of Dorian's words. His mind raced with thoughts. How can I turn this scrutiny to my advantage? How do I navigate these waters without turning potential allies into foes? The following days were a testament to Callista's subtle influence. Whispers of doubt began to spread, as if by an unseen hand. Alexios noticed sidelong glances, the hesitancy in conversations when he approached, the tightening circles that subtly excluded him. It was a quiet campaign, one designed to isolate and unsettle. In his solitude, Alexios found strength. He poured himself into his studies and training, each day pushing his boundaries, mastering the winds with a finesse that even his critics couldn't ignore. But the whispers continued, a persistent murmur like a chilling wind. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of crimson and gold, Alexios stood at the edge of the training fields, the breeze tugging at his hair. Beside him, Chirona appeared, her presence as comforting as it was commanding. "You've become the talk of the academy, Alexios," Chirona said, her voice neutral yet probing. "Not all are pleased to see a new star rise so quickly." Alexios turned to face her, his expression mixed with resolve and uncertainty. "I feel the weight of their eyes, and the coldness of their shoulders," he confessed, the wind carrying his words. "Such is the path of those destined for greatness. You are not just battling the elements, but human nature itself. Envy, fear, ambition, all these will test you as much as any physical challenge in the arena," Chirona advised, her gaze piercing into his soul. "How do I fight an enemy that uses shadows and whispers?" Alexios asked, frustration threading through his voice. "With light and truth. Continue to excel, let your actions speak, and find those who seek the same. Allies are the antidote to isolation," Chirona responded, her eyes softening. The next day, at the crack of dawn, Alexios approached the training grounds with a renewed sense of purpose. He would no longer allow the whispers to dictate his pace or poison his resolve. As he summoned the winds for his morning exercise, creating vortexes that danced to his command, a small crowd gathered, their whispers morphing into words of awe and encouragement. Among the crowd, a young woman with eyes like storm-tossed seas stepped forward. "I'm Lysandra, descendant of Poseidon. Your control of the winds, it's unlike anything I've seen. Could you teach me?" she asked, genuine curiosity replacing the usual wariness in her tone. A smile broke on Alexios's face, the first in many days. Here was his light, his truth. "I'd be glad to," he replied, the winds swirling around them in a gentle caress, a symbol of new alliances forming in the face of old shadows. The weeks that followed were marked by an intense fusion of routine and revelation. Each day, as Alexios mastered the intricacies of his divine heritage, his evenings were spent unraveling the enigmatic layers of his mother's past. His newfound ally, Lysandra, proved invaluable, not only in her mastery of water that complemented his command of the winds but also in her keen intellect and knowledge of the Academy's more obscure resources. One dusky evening, after a grueling session in the training fields, Alexios and Lysandra found themselves in the vast, shadowy stacks of the Academy's library. The walls were lined with ancient texts and artifacts, some as old as the gods themselves. It was here, amid the musty scent of parchment and the soft whisper of turning pages, that Alexios hoped to uncover clues about his mother's life before she had chosen the mortal world. "Here, look at this," Lysandra said, pulling down a heavy tome bound in leather that looked as ancient as the seas. The book thudded onto the table, dust motes dancing in the slanting rays of light that pierced the library's dimness. She flipped through the pages until she came to an illustration that made Alexios lean in, breath caught in anticipation. It was a depiction of a young woman, remarkably similar to his mother, standing beside a figure that was unmistakably Athena. The woman held a staff, and at her feet, a serpent was coiled, symbolizing wisdom and protection. Below the image, the text spoke of a lineage blessed by Athena, chosen to bridge the divine and mortal worlds through wisdom and warfare. This is her," Alexios whispered, his finger tracing the lines of the image. "But why did she leave all this behind?" Lysandra watched him, her expression thoughtful. Sometimes, the weight of destiny is too much, even for the strongest souls. Or perhaps she wanted something different for you. Their research continued, with each scroll and artifact offering more questions than answers. It was clear that his mother had been deeply involved in the politics and protections of their kind, her wisdom sought by many. Yet her decision to leave hinted at secrets that were not meant for the archives. Weeks turned into months, and as winter's chill began to cloak the academy, Alexios felt the pieces of his mother's life slowly assembling into a coherent picture. But with each piece, the image of the woman he had known as a gentle, loving mother grew more complex and distant. She had been a warrior, a scholar, and to some, a potential leader. During a late-night training session under a frost-clear sky, Alexios' thoughts were interrupted by Chirona, who approached silently, her presence almost blending with the night. "You've been digging into your mother's past," she stated, her voice carrying no judgment, only a matter-of-factness. Alexios nodded, not surprised that Chirona knew. "I need to understand her choices." Chirona looked out across the fields, where the shadows of the past seemed to flicker in the corners of Alexios' vision. "She was one of the brightest among us. Her decision to leave was not made lightly. It involved more than just a desire for a simpler life. There are forces in this world, Alexios, that even we cannot always stand against." The words sent a shiver of foreboding through him, not of fear, but of determination. "Was there a threat? Perhaps. Or a sacrifice?" Chirona replied cryptically. "Your mother wished to shield you. The details were her own, kept even from me." Frustration knotted in Alexios' chest. "How am I to follow in her footsteps if I don't fully understand her path?" Chirona turned to him, her gaze intense under the starlight. "You forge your own path, Alexios. Learn from her strengths, be aware of her fears, but do not be bound by her shadows. You are your own person, with your own destiny." As Chirona walked away, her words lingered in the air like the echo of a prophecy. Alexios looked up at the stars, the same stars under which his mother had once sworn her oaths. With a deep breath, he turned his attention back to the winds, his resolve solidifying. "I will find my own way," he murmured to the night, the winds rising to echo his resolve, swirling around him, a testament to his growing power and determination. The secrets of the past would not define him, but they would inform the hero he was destined to become. As the winter deepened, blanketing the Academy of Theoi with a layer of frost, Alexios' training intensified, pushing him to the limits of his physical and mystical abilities. The crisp mornings saw him at the heart of the arena, his figure cutting through the cold air, commanding the winds with a newfound mastery that drew murmurs of respect from even the most skeptical of his peers. Yet, it was not the physical trials that weighed most heavily on him, but the emotional turmoil stirred by the revelations of his mother's past. Each piece of the puzzle that fell into place painted a picture of a life fraught with danger, sacrifice, and immense responsibility, a life she had forsaken for the safety of her son. This knowledge, while filling some gaps in his understanding, deepened the mystery around her sudden departure from the divine to the mundane. One frosty evening, as the last hues of twilight bled into the horizon, Alexios found himself wandering the labyrinthine corridors of the Academy's archives, a torch flickering in his hand, casting shadows that danced like specters from the past. His footsteps echoed softly against the stone as he delved deeper into the forbidden sections, where the most guarded secrets lay hidden under layers of dust and magic seals. "Alexios?" A voice echoed through the corridor, causing him to pause. Turning, he saw Lysandra, her face illuminated by the soft glow of her own torch. "I thought I might find you here," she said, her eyes reflecting a mix of concern and curiosity. "I needed to think, to be alone," Alexios confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. Lysandra stepped closer, her presence a comforting contrast to the chill in the air. "And what have you found in your solitude?" she inquired, her tone gentle yet probing. "Questions, mostly," Alexios sighed, running a hand through his hair. Every answer about my mother leads to more questions. Why she left, what she feared, it's like chasing the wind. Perhaps the wind isn't meant to be caught, but understood. Lysandra offered, her words echoing with wisdom. Maybe it's not about finding all the answers but learning how to live with the questions. Her words struck a chord in Alexios, and a small smile tugged at his lips. You always know what to say, Lysandra. Encouraged by her presence, Alexios led her to a secluded alcove where he had earlier uncovered a series of scrolls and artifacts that seemed directly linked to his mother's tenure at the academy. They settled down on the cold floor, the scrolls laid out between them like a map to an unknown treasure. Together, they pored over the documents, Lysandra's expertise in ancient languages complementing Alexios's intuitive understanding of his mother's coded writings. Hours slipped by as they unraveled complex ciphers and decoded mystical references hidden in the margins of history. As they worked, a particular scroll caught Alexios's attention. It was an account of a council meeting, the handwriting unmistakably his mother's. The text spoke of a looming threat, one that had the potential to disrupt the balance between the divine realms and the mortal world. His mother's notes were frantic, the lines filled with urgency and a palpable fear of an impending catastrophe. This might be why she left, Alexios murmured, his finger tracing the lines of text as he absorbed the gravity of the revelation. Lysandra leaned over, reading the passage closely. It speaks of a sacrifice, a decision to protect something, or someone, very precious. Alexios met her gaze, realization dawning on him. Me. She was protecting me. All this time, her departure, living as mortals, it was to keep me safe from whatever this was. The weight of his mother's sacrifice settled upon him, heavy like the frost on the window panes of the archives. He felt a resolve awaken within him, fueled not by the desire to continue his mother's battles but to ensure her sacrifices were not in vain. As they repacked the scrolls, Alexios stood, a newfound determination lighting his eyes. We need to know more, Lysandra. Not just about the past, but how it ties to the present. This threat, it might still be out there. Lysandra nodded, her expression resolute. Then we'll face it together. Whatever comes, you're not alone. Together, they left the archives, the torches flickering in their wake, casting long shadows behind them. The secrets of the past were slowly coming to light, and with them, the path forward, a path Alexios was now ready to walk, whatever the cost. ### Chapter 8, The Power Within. The revelation of his mother's sacrifice cast a new light on Alexios's purpose at the Academy of Theoi. As he trained under the pallid winter sun, each movement and each spell woven through the air was fueled by a renewed vigor, his mind as sharp as the icy winds he commanded. But it was not just the elemental forces he sought to master. It was the deeper understanding of his lineage and the cryptic threats that loomed over it. Alexios and Lysandra spent countless hours in the archives, their quest for knowledge often stretching into the early hours of the morning. The artifacts and ancient texts whispered secrets of the past, each one a piece of the puzzle that was his heritage. Yet, as much as they unearthed, the magnitude of what remained unknown loomed large, like a shadow stretching at sunset. One evening, as the first stars began to pierce the twilight sky, they discovered a map. It was not like the others in the Academy's vast collection. This one was inscribed on a thin sheet of celestial bronze, edges worn by time, the surface etched with symbols that seemed to shimmer slightly under the torchlight. This is no ordinary map, Lysandra noted, her voice tinged with awe. It's a star map, and look here. She pointed to a constellation that Alexios recognized immediately, the constellation of Hermes. Alexios leaned closer, his finger tracing the constellation. This aligns with the winter solstice. It's a map, yes, but also a timer. It suggests something, an event or a ritual? Lysandra nodded, her eyes reflecting the flicker of the torchlight. And it's almost the solstice now. Whatever this points to, I think we're meant to find it. With the urgency of their discovery spurring them on, Alexios and Lysandra prepared for whatever lay ahead. They gathered supplies, researched ancient rituals associated with Hermes, and consulted with Chirona, who, while cautious, supported their quest for answers. The night of the solstice arrived with a clear sky, the stars blazing in silent testimony to the cycles of the cosmos. Alexios felt the weight of the moment as he and Lysandra stood at the edge of the academy grounds, the star map in hand. "The alignment should happen soon," Lysandra said, her voice steady despite the biting cold. As the celestial clock struck the appointed hour, the map began to glow, a soft, golden light emanating from the constellation of Hermes. It pulsed like a heartbeat, quickening as Alexios held it up towards the night sky. Following the map's guidance, they walked through the frosted forest, the crunch of snow under their boots the only sound in the otherwise silent night. The map led them to a clearing, where the ruins of an ancient altar lay forgotten by all but the stars above. "This is it," Alexios breathed out, the frosty air turning his breath into mist. They approached the altar, the map's glow intensifying. Alexios carefully placed the map on the altar's surface, where it fit perfectly into a carved indent, as if it had been made for this very purpose. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath them, and a beam of starlight shot down from the heavens, striking the map. The light spread, illuminating the clearing with a celestial glow, and from the altar, a figure emerged, a spectral image of Hermes himself. Alexios stepped forward, his heart pounding. "I am Alexios, son of Hermes, seeker of your wisdom." The figure of Hermes, majestic and ethereal, nodded. "You have come far, my son. The path you seek is fraught with peril, but it is yours to walk. The threat your mother foresaw is awakening again, and you must prepare. Seek the staff of Caduceus, for it holds the power to maintain balance between the divine and mortal worlds." As the apparition faded, the night returned to stillness, leaving Alexios and Lysandra in awe. The encounter had not only confirmed the looming threat but also set them on a path of incredible danger and profound discovery. "We have much to do," Lysandra said, her voice resolute. "Yes, and we'll face it together," Alexios replied, his determination now sealed by the divine encounter. "For my mother, for the academy, and for the world." With the stars as their witnesses, they set out from the clearing, the weight of their destiny both a burden and a beacon. As they made their way back to the academy, the map no longer just a relic of the past, but a key to the future, Alexios felt the power of his lineage surge within him, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As dawn broke over the Academy of Theoi, the world seemed to hold its breath in the frosty air. The night's revelations had set a new course for Alexios, and with the first light, he felt the weight of his destiny more profoundly than ever. But knowledge alone was not enough. He needed allies, strength, and preparation for the trials ahead. Walking through the quiet corridors of the academy, Alexios pondered the task before him. The staff of Caduceus, an ancient artifact of immense power, was lost to time, its last known whereabouts shrouded in myths as old as the gods themselves. Finding it would require more than just bravery and wisdom. It would need a convergence of many strengths. As he entered the dining hall, the usual buzz of conversation seemed to pause momentarily, the air charged with a mix of curiosity and caution. His encounter with the spectral Hermes had not gone unnoticed, and rumors, like wildfire, had spread throughout the student body. Alexios scanned the room, his gaze settling on various groups of students, potential allies with their unique abilities and strengths. He approached a table where a few well-known figures sat, their eyes wary yet intrigued. "Morning," Alexios greeted them, his voice steady. "I need your help." Murmurs of surprise and whispers of interest circled the table. Dorian, who had been a steadfast friend, nodded encouragingly. "What do you need?" asked Dorian, his tone implying that the request would be no small task. "We're going on a quest to find the staff of Caduceus," Alexios explained, his eyes scanning the group for any sign of hesitation. It's not just any quest. It's dangerous, possibly life-threatening. But it's vital, not just for me, but for all of us here. The students exchanged looks, the weight of the decision palpable in their silence. Finally, a girl with flame-red hair and eyes like molten gold spoke up. "I'm in," she declared. Her name was Pyrrha, known for her command over fire and her fearless spirit. One by one, others at the table signified their agreement. Each brought a unique talent, Pyrrha with her fire, Dorian with his mastery of air, a son of Poseidon who could shape water, and a daughter of Demeter whose prowess with earth could prove invaluable. With his team assembled, Alexios spent the next few days in intense preparation. They pored over ancient texts and maps, trained together to synchronize their abilities, and planned their route based on the scant clues available about the staff's last known location. The Academy's library became their command center. Lysandra, with her deep knowledge of ancient languages and lore, guided their research, uncovering references to the staff in obscure texts that hinted at its last appearance in a forgotten temple dedicated to Hermes, hidden in a valley shrouded by enchantments and guarded by creatures of old. As they prepared, Alexios felt the dynamic within the group shift from cautious alliance to a bonded team, united by a common cause. They tested each other's strengths, compensated for weaknesses, and built a camaraderie that Alexios hoped would withstand the challenges ahead. One evening, as they gathered around a large map spread out on a table, Alexios looked at each of his companions. "We leave at dawn. It's going to be dangerous, and I can't promise we'll all return. But I promise to stand by each of you, as you have chosen to stand by me." Nods of determination met his words. They were ready as they could be for the unknown. That night, Alexios stood outside, looking up at the stars, the same stars that had guided countless heroes before him. He thought of his mother, her sacrifice, and the spectral image of Hermes. A sense of solemnity filled him, but also a fierce resolve. "I will not fail," he whispered to the night, the wind carrying his words across the sleeping academy. As the first light of dawn painted the sky with streaks of gold and crimson, Alexios and his team gathered at the gates. With a deep breath, he stepped forward, leading them out into the world beyond, where ancient magic and untold dangers awaited. The quest for the staff of Caduceus had begun, and with it, the next chapter of his destiny. The morning air was crisp, laced with the scent of pine and the distant murmur of the sea as Alexios and his team set out from the gates of the Academy of Theoi. The sky, painted in strokes of gold and crimson, seemed to promise both peril and wonder. With each step away from the familiar grounds of the Academy, Alexios felt the weight of history on his shoulders and the uncertainty of the future beckoning them forward. The team moved with a quiet intensity, their minds focused and hearts buoyed by a shared sense of purpose. Alexios led the way, the map clutched in his hand not just a guide but a symbol of the trust and responsibility he had been given. Beside him, Lysandra consulted an ancient tome, her finger tracing lines of arcane text that whispered secrets of old magics and hidden paths. As they trekked through the dense forest that bordered the academy, the sun rose higher, filtering through the branches in dappled patterns. The terrain grew rougher, and the air turned chill as they ascended into the hills, where legend told the temple containing the staff of Caduceus lay hidden. "We are not just searching for a staff but for a way to balance the scales of power," Alexios said, breaking the silence as they paused to survey the path ahead. His voice carried a gravity that resonated with his team, reminding them of the stakes of their quest. Dorian, wielding the air with an ease that belied the complexity of his magic, nodded. "And in finding it, we might just find more about ourselves and what we are truly capable of," he added, his gaze scanning the horizon. Pyrrha, her red hair a bright flame against the green of the forest, stepped forward, her hands sparking with latent energy. "Let's keep moving. Every moment counts." Their journey took them deeper into the wilderness, beyond the maps of the known world and into realms where the whispers of ancient gods seemed to echo through the trees. Midday turned to afternoon, and the forest canopy thickened, casting long shadows that danced with the light. Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, leaves rustling as if in warning. A low growl reverberated through the air, a sound as old as the earth itself. From the underbrush, a creature emerged, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light, its form a grotesque blend of lion and serpent. A chimera, Lysandra breathed out, stepping back as the creature fixed its gaze upon them. Alexios raised his hand, the wind swirling around his fingers. Stay calm. It's guarding the temple. We must show we are worthy. The chimera circled them, its movements predatory. Alexios met its gaze, his resolve firm. Speaking in the ancient tongue of the gods, he called out, "We seek only to restore balance, to protect what has been entrusted to us. Allow us passage, guardian of the temple." For a tense moment, the creature regarded Alexios, its eyes narrowing. Then, as if understanding his words, it stepped aside, a path clearing before them. With the chimera watching, the team advanced, their spirits lifted by the successful negotiation. The forest soon gave way to a clearing, at the center of which stood an ancient temple, its stones covered in moss and ivy, but still majestic in its solemn decay. "The Temple of Hermes," Lysandra whispered, all coloring her tone. They approached the temple, each step resonating with the echoes of those who had walked this path before them. The air was thick with the power of the place, the whisper of the wind carrying voices of the past. At the temple's entrance, Alexios paused, turning to his companions. "Whatever lies inside, we face it together. Remember, we carry not just the hopes of the Academy, but of all who believe in the balance between the divine and the mortal." With a collective nod of determination, they stepped into the temple, the darkness within seeming to swallow them whole. But they were not deterred. Together, with their combined strengths and unwavering courage, they ventured into the heart of the temple, ready to face whatever trials awaited, to uncover the secrets held tight by the shadows of history. The threshold of the Temple of Hermes felt like the border between worlds, where the breath of history met the pulse of the present. As Alexios and his companions crossed it, the air grew denser, imbued with an ancient magic that seemed to acknowledge their arrival. Each step echoed off the worn stones, a solemn drumbeat marking their passage into the heart of sacred grounds. Inside, the temple was vast, its ceilings lost in shadows, supported by towering columns carved with scenes of Hermes' exploits, messages, trades, and transitions, the realms in which he ruled. The walls were lined with torches that flickered to life at their approach, casting a flickering glow that made the carvings seem to move in the dim light. "The first trial must be near," Alexios whispered, his voice barely more than a murmur in the vast expanse of the temple. He recalled the ancient texts speaking of a series of trials designed to test the worthiness of those who sought Hermes' artifacts. No sooner had he spoken than the ground beneath them began to rumble, and from the shadows emerged figures of stone and earth. They were automatons, creations of ancient magic, moving with a grace that belied their rugged appearances. Lysandra stepped forward, her tome open. "These are the guardians of the path, forged by Hephaestus himself to protect sacred relics. We must defeat them to prove our worth." The guardians advanced, their movements synchronized and purposeful. Alexios nodded to Pyrrha, who raised her hands, summoning a circle of flames that danced around them, creating a barrier. The guardians paused, momentarily halted by the fire. Dorian stepped up next to Alexios, the air swirling at his command. "Let's combine our strengths. Pyrrha, when I give the signal, drop the fire." With a sharp nod, Pyrrha concentrated, her focus on maintaining the flames. Dorian inhaled deeply, then exhaled, sending a powerful gust of wind that whipped the flames into a fiery vortex. The guardians, caught in the inferno, slowed as their stone bodies began to crack under the thermal shock. Seeing their opportunity, Alexios and the son of Poseidon, named Selim, charged forward. Selim summoned a wave of water from the moisture in the air, dousing some of the heated stone and causing it to shatter. Alexios, meanwhile, wielded the winds to hurl fragments of the broken guardians against the others, effectively using the temple's defenses against itself. As the last of the guardians crumbled to dust, the team paused, catching their breaths in the sudden quiet. The path forward slowly illuminated, leading deeper into the temple. That was only the first challenge, Alexios said, scanning the faces of his team. Stay alert. The next trials may not be so straightforward. They progressed deeper into the temple, where the air grew cooler and the ambience darker. The next chamber they entered was smaller, the center dominated by a large pedestal upon which lay a silver lyre, glowing faintly in the dim light. The lyre of Apollo, Lysandra breathed, recognition flashing in her eyes. It's said to reveal truths hidden to the naked eye. As they approached, a melody filled the air, haunting and beautiful, weaving around them like a tangible presence. The lyre played on its own, its strings vibrating with divine energy. Images began to form in the air, scenes of the past, the founding of the temple, the hiding of the staff, and the battles fought over it. The lyre shows us what was, and what could be, Lysandra interpreted, her eyes wide with wonder. Watching the scenes unfold, Alexios felt a connection to his mother stronger than ever. He saw her in her prime, hiding the staff, a young woman with determination in her eyes. The image solidified his resolve. We're close, he said, turning to his companions. Let's keep moving. Encouraged by their success, the team ventured further, each member alert and ready. The temple had tested their combat skills and their ability to perceive beyond the physical. Alexios knew that the final trial, likely guarding the staff of Caduceus itself, would be the ultimate test of their resolve, wisdom, and courage. With each step, the weight of their quest grew heavier, but so too did their determination. For Alexios, every challenge faced and every secret unveiled on this sacred ground brought him closer not only to his mother's legacy but also to understanding the balance he sought to restore. As they moved forward, the shadows seemed to retreat, the path clearer with each passing moment. The trials of the Temple of Hermes were far from over, but Alexios and his team were ready to face whatever mysteries lay ahead, bound by a shared destiny and an unbreakable will to succeed. The deeper they ventured into the Temple of Hermes, the more the air thrummed with a palpable energy, as if the very stones were alive with the echoes of millennia. Alexios led his team with a calm determination, his senses attuned to the subtle shifts in the atmosphere, each breath a silent conversation with the past. As they moved through a narrow corridor, the walls abruptly expanded into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The chamber was circular, the ceiling a dome of intricate mosaics depicting the heavens. In the center, a beam of light descended from an opening in the dome, illuminating an altar where the staff of Caduceus was supposed to rest. Yet the pedestal was empty, save for a series of inscriptions that spiraled down its sides. "Look at the patterns," Lysandra said, her voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "These are not just decorative. They're a form of ancient script melding celestial alignments with terrestrial magic. It's a puzzle." The team gathered around the pedestal, studying the inscriptions intently. As they deciphered the script, it became clear that each line corresponded to a specific celestial event. The alignment of stars, planets, and moons that opened the way to the staff's hiding place was a rare occurrence, set to happen that very night. "We have until midnight to solve this," Alexios concluded, checking the position of the sun through the chamber's opening. "The celestial event won't last long. We need to be ready." The preparation involved more than just understanding the script. They practiced the sequence of actions required, each movement, and each spell needing to be executed with precision. As night approached, a tense excitement built among them. This was what they had trained for, the moment that all their efforts would either come to fruition or fall apart. As the stars began to align, visible through the open dome, the chamber filled with a soft, otherworldly light. The inscriptions on the pedestal glowed faintly, responding to the celestial energy. The team took their positions, each member ready to play their part in the intricate ballet of magic and might. Alexios stood at the forefront, his focus absolute, as he began the incantation. Lysandra directed the alignment, her voice steady as she recited the ancient words that resonated with the frequencies of the stars. Pyrrha and Dorian controlled the elemental energies, their powers mingling in the air, creating a vortex that centered on the altar. As the celestial clock struck the appointed hour, a deep rumble echoed through the chamber. The pedestal split open, revealing a hidden compartment below. Inside, bathed in the ethereal light, lay the staff of Caduceus, its twin serpents entwined around a winged rod, pulsating with a power that seemed to beat in sync with the heart of the cosmos. The moment Alexios lifted the staff, a surge of energy flowed through him, a connection so profound it felt as if the staff had always been a part of him. His eyes met those of his companions, a silent acknowledgement of their success and the bond that had carried them through. But the triumph was short-lived. As they prepared to leave, the ground shook violently, a warning of the temple's displeasure at the removal of its relic. The chamber began to collapse around them, stones falling like rain from the ceiling. "Run!" Alexios shouted, the staff in his hand glowing as he channeled its power to shield his friends. They raced through the collapsing corridors, dodging debris and leaping over cracks that spread like spiderwebs through the stone. They burst out of the temple just as the entrance crumbled behind them, sealing it off from the world once again. Breathing heavily, they looked back at the temple, now a pile of rubble under the quiet stars. "We did it!" Alexios gasped, his relief palpable. "But we must move quickly. The power of the staff must be safeguarded, and there are those who would use it for ill." With the staff of Caduceus in hand and their mission accomplished, the team faced a new journey back to the academy, one that would test their resolve further. But for now, under the starlit sky, they allowed themselves a moment to celebrate their victory, the weight of the staff in Alexios's hand a reminder of the balance they had fought so hard to protect. Did you spot the golden star in today's video? If you did, make sure to comment the time you saw it to be mentioned in our next video. Thank you for sharing a moment of your day with me. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Really helps a lot. If you don't, well, I'll still love you. Thanks for stopping by.